We know Wrexham can beat Chelsea this weekend. Of course, we know it. I really believe we can. I just want to see us give a good account for ourselves. I want to leave that stadium saying, I'm really proud of that team.
Rob, Ryan, Red.
Hello, welcome to Rob, Ryan, Red, the Wrexham podcast brought to you in association with Red 10 People Development. Well, the valley wasn't low enough at the weekend, so perhaps there ain't no mountain high enough to keep us from the FA Cup quarter-finals either. After victory over Charlton, attention turns to the monumental challenge of Chelsea in the FA Cup. But hey, mountains are there to be climbed, aren't they? On this episode, we will look ahead to the FA Cup tie, how Wrexham should approach it with Hull on the horizon next week, and we will bring you the latest in the Championship playoff picture as well. All that and more on this episode. Well, Nath, we were there in London at the weekend. Apologies that we were maybe slightly too busy and inebriated to bring you a podcast post-match there. But the excitement, we are drunk on FA Cup sort of memories and nostalgia this weekend. We are so excited for what it could be. And sorry if we don't talk too much about the game that's just been, Nath, because it feels like we're counting down to Christmas almost. We've been waiting for this. Parky always said, look, I want to pit myself against a Premier League team in the FA Cup. We did that. We beat Nottingham Forest. And immediately the haters said, yeah, but it's only Nottingham Forest. Why didn't you go beat one of the big guys now? Chelsea at home, the world champions. This is a very tasty tie. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good. Glad I'm going to be there. That was a drama that we'll no doubt get onto a little bit later on. I actually think, in a weird sort of way, Charlton, because let's not dress Charlton up to be anything that it wasn't. It was close to a smash and grab. You know, I think they had a lot of chances. How they didn't score, but we defended so resolutely. We defended with real purpose, and it would have been so easy for a lot of those guys to maybe pull out of those 50-50s because you don't want to get injured before Chelsea. You all want to be involved against Chelsea. And ultimately, it's one game in the Championship against Charlton. So I was really glad that Parky took it seriously, didn't rotate massively, got the win, and what was a big win. And we are firmly in that playoff mix. And ultimately, that is, the biggest possible carrot. And that's come from me, who loves the FA Cup and would love to make the final. But I'm glad we didn't take our foot off the gas, even if there were a few hairy moments. And I will say quickly, shout out to Blake and Brad, who we met before the game. Blake left a very nice comment on our last YouTube video saying that we were as nice in person, Rich, as we are on the podcast. So we managed to keep the mask on at least for our meeting with Blake and Brad. But yeah, I had a good time, except for the £5.50 sausage roll that was worse than a Greg's one.
Yeah, it was an experience. It was a great day out again. Fantastic away support, as we always get on the road anyway, but particularly at Charlton. Again, it's one of those stands where they give you such a big away allocation that you don't always take. And we get the credit, I suppose, for how many fans we took there on a Saturday for a team. We played last season. We had the agonising, heartbreaking draw there last year, and we managed to hold on to the end thanks to the efforts of Callum Doyle's incredible defensive display, Arthur's incredible save right at the death as well, and like I said, another valuable 3 points towards dare I say it, the kind of victory that those promotion teams go on to get, where you just grind out the results. Reminded me quite a bit of sort of Huddersfield away last season, where similarly we probably didn't deserve to win the game, but we did, and that is all that matters. And when I was getting on the train, I think I was on the overground I was on to go back. You directed me, Nave, because I do not know London, so you tell me where to go and I just follow your instructions. There was some Charlton fans who admitted that they weren't actually Charlton fans, they were just there for one game, and they said Wrexham are the worst team I've ever seen live, and I've seen West Ham, was their sort of phrase. And I was like, yeah, they were just trying to bait Wrexham fans on the train and stuff. And I was just like, you literally only came to see the Wrexham, and the worst team you've ever seen, they won again, so they must be doing something right. Like you said, Chelsea is not a distraction, but there could have been a few eyes on it. I know Parky and the players will say, look, we were fully focused on Charlton, and players always say we are only focused on this one game coming up, but you've got to be thinking about Chelsea in the back of your mind. What is your feeling very early then heading into this game. What did you see at Charlton that maybe gives you hope? Anything that you saw that gives you a little bit of, not dread, because I don't think it would be a disaster if we were to lose, but any concerns you've got at this stage going into the game?
I think my immediate concern was how easy it was for Charlton to play through the lines in central midfield. We're not going to have Ben Sheaf, we're not going to have Matty James back. I personally don't think Zak Vyner is going to start in defensive midfield against Chelsea. So that was slightly concerning because, as we said in the ground, you make these heroic blocks, right on the line or in the area, and it's kind of those are amazing. But how has it got to that point? Repeatedly. So I'm a little bit worried about that. But I thought we just really showed a lot of resolve, and we got stuck in. And more than ever, I was thinking about how if a Callum Doyle block or a George Dobson made a real last-ditch challenge, if that happened at the racecourse, the stands would be almost coming off the ground. It would be so loud and the roar. And there's a chat later on in the podcast with my colleague at the Mail who covers Chelsea, Kieran Gill, and we talk a lot there about mentality of the Chelsea players and the fact this isn't Charlton. Charlton is a much bigger stadium than the racecourse. Hull, where they played in the last round, is a much bigger stadium than the racecourse. And I just feel like everything can feel like it's caving in on you at the racecourse when it's not going well. And Rosenior, the players. So my main takeaway was if we have moments like that, that where people are making heroic challenges, or you know what it's like, Rich. If someone makes a big challenge early on, George Thomas, and goes straight through Garnacho or somebody, just lift the place, and hopefully the atmosphere is the best we'll have seen it, because I think there's been a lot of talk about atmosphere was good today, atmosphere was bad today. We need it to be one of the best atmospheres we've had in years. We need that place to be absolutely rocking. And I think moments that we saw at Charlton can do that.
I also think we've been blessed by the fact it's the 5:45 game rather than the 12:30. I do think those 12:30 games so different. I know Maxwell did against Palace, but I think it's so difficult to cause an upset in those early ones sometimes, just because, like I said, race course under the lights, everyone's up for it. Lots of us will have had a few drinks in the day. We'd be really, really up for it. There's a bit more of an occasion under the lights at the Kairos. Just want to say on atmosphere, two things. One, I think that having the rail seating, sort of the safe standing in the tech end has really helped the last few games, because there is just now a tendency that you stand up and everyone's on their feet. And I just think that makes you a bit more engaged. It makes the atmosphere just that bit better. I also think the other factor that we've kind of had the last few matches is there just seems to be a few more player chants. And I know we keep on singing this Parky Wonderland chant, which, winter's over now. The sun's shining here. So, but having those chants about players and about Parky does really help, because we've said it throughout the sort of takeover process that, National League and League Two, you would just chant, Ollie, Ollie, or we've got Mullin, and the place would be on its feet. There's nobody better than Stephen Fletcher. Everyone joins in and rousing. And this season, we kind of don't have those kind of bespoke chants. Trust me, and Nath come up with them all the time, and they are not. They don't take off.
The Ryan Barnett had a chant. He doesn't play now. Also, I'm slightly conflicted because I love the Ollie Rathbone chant, but I already have curly hair, so I don't know really what to say when it gets to that line. But there was a lady who came up to me in the Mice Gwyn recently, I think before the Portsmouth games. Sorry I didn't get your name, but she was saying that in her opinion, it is the lack of sort of fresh, creative chants for, Broadhead, Windass, other players that don't have them, and that is, in her opinion, a big shift towards having a better atmosphere. You've got more bespoke chants, and I think we're getting there a little bit, and we're going to get onto Rathbone maybe in one of the second sections, looking ahead to Chelsea. But he seems to be the one right now that's got the chant, and hopefully more pop up, because I'm not going to be very good at them, but maybe you can. Maybe you get the cogs turning.
Yeah, always. I think we need to refresh we've got Super Phil Parky and just have with Hyam at the back and Kiefer in attack, taking Wrexham to the Premier League. That should work. And it seems like every team across the country now have a version of Zombie by the Cranberries, where it's he's in your head, Parky, 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 Key, because he gets in everyone's head. And we said it at the weekend that Nathan Jones is kind of the archetypal white trainer manager who gets more credit and is a kind of proper passion merchant. And Parky, again, I know that the other podcast, Fearless, keep on putting that graphic out of every manager that Parky's beaten, and it's just this sort of roll call of every manager in the Championship who Parky just gets the better of. So I think he's in your head, Parky. Mate, when we are 2-0 up against Chelsea on Saturday, I want that. I want that ringing around the racecourse. But yeah, let us know what you think about the chance, and if you think that that is maybe part of the reason the atmosphere isn't as good. There's been spells this season, but I think last few games it has been really decent, and on the road it always is. Well, we just finished then on Charlton before we kind of properly get onto Chelsea. Who else shone for you then? Because I know we said the midfield, you still kind of worry about the lack of a Sheaf or a James there to just break up play and keep things simple and have a cool, calm head. Dobbo tried it a bit of the weekend, but he isn't that guy, and that's fine. He's Dobson. He does some stuff brilliantly. Doyle's great. Arthur's save though, Nath. I mean, we'll get on to kind of player of the season because there's one guy who seems to be maybe making a run for it at the moment. But Arthur, again, it's remarkable, isn't it, this season? Because Danny Ward was signed to replace him, and will he ever play for Wrexham again?
I think it's really interesting with Arthur because as a pure shot stopper, and I'll be honest, I don't know if I will do this yet or not, so spoiler alert, it might already have happened, but I was so tempted to do a combined 11 for Chelsea and Wrexham and to put Arthur Okonkwo as the keeper. I was really tempted to do that. I probably won't do that just for the sake of my phone battery, but I was really tempted to do that. And I think on a pure shot stopping level, I think he is absolutely elite. I think, and I appreciate the Charlton one is a rocket and it's straight at him, but we've seen over the course of the season, he, as a shot stopper, he is brilliant. It just confuses me that we repeatedly go to him to play with his feet, which is not his strength. His kicking at Charlton was very hit and miss. Some of them were great, absolute bullets. Others were, barely getting out the penalty area and just looping into the air. So I am always curious by the fact I know teams nowadays want to play out from the back and keep possession and not give the ball away. There's got to be better options than repeatedly giving it to Arthur in danger when you've got a striker bearing down on you. And I wouldn't fancy that too much against Chelsea. Get it long, get it away, play the percentages, right? Like get it further up the field and away from your goal. And Arthur, from a shot stopping point of view, I would back against even the very, very best players. I think he'd have a very good chance. Physically massive, got good instincts, good leap on him. But yeah, letting him play out from the back too much is giving me heart palpitations. So against Chelsea, kick it long, kick it deep, and leave him to do what he's best at.
He genuinely reminds me of like a young David De Gea, Arthur Okonkwo. Like he's so good at, like you said, the fundamentals of a goalkeeper. And ultimately, you don't want a goalkeeper who's amazing with his feet if he can't keep the ball at the back of the net. But with Okonkwo, he is so good at that. His main job, it is then that kind of extra responsibility he's been given that he's not as sharp with, and maybe long down the line, if you want to be one of the top teams who control games in the Premier League, you need that. But right now it's fine. But like you said, you kind of just play to his strengths, and I sometimes think just hit it long, because I just have nightmares of I don't want Arthur to have one of those games on TV where everyone's watching. Like when we went to Blackburn, they had a really tough night and it was loads of people watching, loads of people just tweeted, this Wrexham goalkeeper, laughing face. It's like, no, if you watched Arthur Okonkwo every week, you would know this guy is top.
And then Swansea obviously makes the mistake there, but that's why I was so pleased he had the Forest game. And again, as everyone's leaving, as I was getting on the train, a different one to you, there was three blokes who were there. One of them was a Millwall fan that had gone to watch Charlton, and they were talking about that save, the goalkeeper. That was the kind of, they weren't coming out talking about Callum Doyle or Ollie Rathbone or Kiefer, who I thought was good, put himself about really well. They weren't talking about any of that. They were just talking about the goalkeeper, and they said, "Look, if it wasn't for that goalkeeper, we'd have got something out of the game." So he is a player that was not written off. That's too strong, but like was cast aside a little bit to be number two. Has fought his way back in, and I don't see any way he gets moved now. So he was big against Forest, and I expect him to come up big again. Just don't give him too much to do with his feet. Okay, the last point, or the last narrative strand I wanted to pick out from Charlton was Oliver Rathbone. I want curly hair too, as everyone's singing, and also people offering up their wives to have fun with Ollie Rathbone. But is he going to win a second Player of the Season award? I'm starting to believe he will, Rich.
Yeah, I can see it happening. Doesn't mean it's one of those weird ones where, in grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter too much. I think there's been more consistent performance across the entire campaign. But when you look at Ollie Rathbone, when he's actually been available, he can't help the fact he was injured. And as soon as he's been fit, he is just doing what the fans love. He takes those shots on. He drives the team forward. He comes up with massive, massive goals. He's so lovable, likable. He loves it at Wrexham. It feels like back-to-backs loading for Ollie Rathbone. Honestly, right now, I cannot see it not happening, really.
Who would we have? It's the 4th of March when we record this. The final game of the regular season, we're hoping to extend that into the playoffs, will be the 2nd of May. We've got less than 2 months remaining of the season. Was it 10 games to go? 11 games to go? Who are your top 3 players then for player of the season? Because before you give yours, there's a period at the very beginning. George Dobson, best player. Then Matty James came into his own. Then Kiefer was playing really well at the beginning. Ollie Rathbone's done really well now. Doyle has had, a lot of highs, maybe a couple of lows as well. Who do you see as the kind of the podium? Maybe not 1, 2, 3, but just who is in the mix, do you think?
I think, like you said, we had this chat on WhatsApp, didn't we, as well, where we said, every month it's almost changed. There was, like I said, you again, the weird thing, and it happened last season to Ollie's benefit, was it was that recency bias. Because if you think about before Christmas, it was Matty James, Dobson, and Kiefer. They were the 3 for me. They were the 3. Dobson every week. Matty James, so good. And then you saw Kiefer every single week he was bailing us out. It felt almost Mullin-esque and a little bit Ollie Palmer, where he was just doing all the dirty work, getting the goals, grafting. And you forget, I know because Sam Smith played so well, you forget how amazing Kiefer was in that first half of the season. And then since Christmas, Doyle's really stepped up. And I think lots of people will be voting for Doyle. Ollie Rathbone, I think, is going to be the guy who goes on to win it, just because he's doing the glamorous stuff as well. He's getting those big goals. He's taking ties by the scruff of the neck. Just so important. But if you ask me right now, who has been the best player across the entire campaign, and I'm not saying who's had the most man of the matches, who's been the best player every single week. I'm saying who's been the most consistent at a high level. For me, it's Dom Hyam. And I think he might be a shout for kind of players' player of the year, because they just appreciate what he does. But I always bring it back to this. He just reminds me of Manny Smith. When Manny Smith, in the anniversary season, we used to call it Manny of the match, because we would lose most weeks and Manny Smith would just get man of the match because he played so well, so effortless in centre back. And I think Dom Hyam has just been the backbone of the team. And maybe that's just me being sort of a wanky hipster, which, I can't help who I am. But yeah, for me, it's Dom Hyam. I don't think lots of people will agree, and that's fine. But what about you?
I actually like that, Shat. I wasn't sure who you were going to say. I actually thought for a second there, I thought you were going to commit to Matty James. And I just think maybe the injury might sort of derail him a bit, really unfortunate. I think if he'd have played all the way through, I think he probably would win it. It's interesting. I think Hyam, like you say, could end up being players' player. I actually think players' player will be George Thomason on the left. I think he's been really good in a position that's not natural to him. He's been a real threat. He plays all the time in arguably the toughest position in the team. So I think he's really interesting for players. But I think it will be Rathbone. I think Rathbone peaks at the key time in a season. I think he's always ended seasons for us really impressively. And he comes up with big goals. And I've said it before, it's the way he plays. He sort of plays like a fan would play if they were able to be in the team. The way he moves around the pitch, he never looks languid. Body language always looks super positive. He has boundless energy. Players seem to like being around him. He can score from distance. He can score, close up. He's got all these different elements to his game. He celebrates, in great fashion. That doesn't mean anything, I know, but I just think he is very appealing to a fan in how he plays. Whereas I think numbers-wise, Josh Windass will finish with better numbers than Ollie Rathbone. He almost certainly will finish with better numbers than Ollie Rathbone. And yet, most of the talk is body language. Is he interested? Is he bothered? Nathan Broadhead might finish with better numbers than Ollie Rathbone in terms of goals and assists, and yet it won't be in the conversation. And I don't think necessarily should be, but I think won't be in the conversation. So the one I think will be really hard done by is Kiefer. I think because Kiefer's massive contribution to getting battered, bruised, the goals, I think is going to get massively glossed over. And without those at the beginning, I just think, Millwall away and the various other games where he came up massive for us, I think it's just going to kind of be airbrushed a little bit, and we're going to focus on the last 3 months or whatever it is. So I think it'll be Rathbone. You think it could be Dom Hyam or maybe players playing. I think George Thomason is going to get players. So let us know in the comments below. Who do you think, less than 2 months to go, who is your player of the season? Because it's getting to that point now where I give it another month and then players will no doubt be being asked in the dressing room for their vote and whatnot, and we'll be voting online. So yeah, let us know in the comments who you would give the award to.
Right then, Nath, we've had enough foreplay now. Let's get to the main event. Chelsea this weekend, FA Cup 5th round. This is what we've always dreamt of. Wrexham versus Chelsea at the Kairos. We're recording this today as well on what would have been Joey Jones' birthday. That feels quite apt. It's such a shame that he's not going to be there to experience it. But this is a game that's got so much history about it. People talk about those clashes with Chelsea, sort of growing up in these classic racecourse memories. The links between the club as well, Niedzwiecki, you've got Jones, Mickey Thomas, John Neal, Frank Sinclair as well. Chelsea world champions. I mean, they might not be the best team in the Premier League right now. They seem to get players sent off every single week. Under Liam Rosenior, they seem a lot better, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And I think their performances are often very good. And I'll get into it with the chat I've got with Kieran, but I think people want to mock Rosenior because he's easy to make fun of, and he's like the David Brent of managers for any fans of The Office. And I just think that's so unfair. Against Charlton, against Hull, they made light work of that. They made light work of those games. And, as much as I would love to think Wrexham will give it a better go, it is an enormous challenge against the world champions, the best team in the world. They have the badge to prove it. And it's a massive ask. They've spent, £1 billion on a playing squad that no doubt will be heavily rotated. They play Aston Villa tonight. We'll see if they get any more red cards in that one. And then it's Paris Saint-Germain after a fixture list that includes Arsenal away, Aston Villa away, Wrexham away, and PSG away. And the toughest of those games is in North Wales, is quite a feat, really. I say in jest. It's really tough, Rich. It is really tough. But for these players, these Wrexham players, this is what you wanted, right? Aside from Josh Windass, but this is it. You want to test yourself against the best. If you're George Dobson, you want to go up against Enzo Fernandez. If you're George Thomason, you want to go up against Pedro Neto. It sounds mad to say. If you're Issa Kabore, get yourself up against Alejandro Garnacho. And if Kiefer Moore against Tosin Adarabioyo, probably, who Chelsea fans aren't really keen on at the minute. Liam Delap against Dom Hyam. Liam Delap against Callum Doyle. Were they in the Man City Academy together? I would say probably. Might know each other. Robert Sanchez in the Chelsea goal has got a mistake in him if he plays. I think if you're a Wrexham player, I hate the thing of like free hit, don't have a lot to lose because you have a game to lose. It's not a free hit ever. But you can go out there and give it your best shot, and people aren't going to be mad at you if you lose to a player worth 100 million or 150 million. Like, you can go express yourself, and if Esteval comes on and beats us and we've got a Brazilian wonder kid that tears us apart, Rich, we have to just hold our hands up and say those are the levels. But excitement should be the overriding factor. Excitement, and you know what we need? We just need to make it nervy. Get an early chance, get the crowd up, get Rosenior in that thinking, oh God, like we underestimated this George Thomason guy, or we underestimated this Nathan Broadhead. Like, we need to just get up and at them. I think about that Sheffield United home game. I was in Philadelphia, admittedly, for that one, but speaking to people who were there, it was like the walls just caved in. Tom O'Connor scored, didn't he? And then was it James Jones scored not long after? It felt like we were just scoring, and their heads were seeing stars, and then they get the last minute goal that John Egan is shushing the crowd with. So you've just got to get Chelsea on the ropes, and from there, you never know what can happen.
at the time of recording, 6th in the Premier League against 6th in the Championship as well, Nathan. You mentioned there Robert Sanchez. The last time Robert Sanchez played at the Kairos was in the FA Cup first round in 2019 for Rochdale, a 0-0 draw. In the Rochdale team that day, a certain Rekil Pike and Owen O'Connell. So, how times change. I vividly remember watching that game and thinking we were really hard done by. I seem to think Bobby Grant had quite a good match from what memory tells me, but we've come a long way from facing Robert Sanchez in the FA Cup first round to the 5th round this weekend. And, this is one of the things as well that we're going to lose very soon. And this isn't me being negative for the sake of it, but while the stadium is at its capacity that it is now, it still feels very lower league and sort of League One, League Two level in the best way. Because like you said, if Chelsea go to Charlton, they go to Hull, they're playing in these bigger stadiums and it's not quite as intimidating. But you turn up to North Wales and, when we get a brand new stand and the capacity's increased, it will change quite a bit. And, the club want to modernise and get as professional in every aspect as they can, which is great. But for cup upsets, you kind of want it to be as gritty and horrible as possible. You want to make it as uncomfortable for those Chelsea millionaires coming up to North Wales, don't you? And I think that is part of the charm of the Kairos. And we mentioned it again, I think we did it when the draw was made. This is one of our last chances probably for us to have one of these glamour ties as the underdog, because in 6 months' time, it might be Chelsea coming to the racecourse for a Premier League match. And that sounds absolutely obscene as a sentence. The next sentence I'm about to say to you is going to sound even more ridiculous. Should Wrexham rest players against Chelsea to stay fit for Hull City?
Nah, you can't. You have to show your best face against Chelsea. This is such a big opportunity. Wrexham can beat Chelsea. They can. They might lose in 99 out of 100 simulations or whatever the supercomputer does and tells us. Wrexham can beat Chelsea at the racecourse. It's not the most far-fetched idea. If Macclesfield can knock off Crystal Palace and Port Vale, are going to go up against Sunderland, and you wouldn't rule them out there. Cup shocks are what they are. Would Wrexham beating Chelsea, this expensively assembled, this £1 billion Chelsea, be a bigger shock than Wrexham beating Arsenal? I would say no, it wouldn't be. So everything is possible. I wish Joey was there to see it. I'm sure there'd be a chance of, oh, Joey. But no, I'm not resting players. And also, who are you resting? And, what sort of depth are you pointing to here? Are you saying that Keeler Dunn is finally going to see the pitch? You're saying Bailey Kadamata? It's not going to happen. It'll be a very similar team, and it'll be against Hull where I think you might see the odd change. You have to give it a go against Chelsea because, like I say, they've just been to Arsenal, very plush. They've just been to Villa, very nice. They're going to PSG, very nice in terms of the facilities they're going to get, and they're far away from the fans, and they're not going to be hearing every cry and every piece of abuse that's thrown their way. They'll get all that at Wrexham. Nice tight changing room. I know they've been to Lincoln as well in the not too distant past. So, but these are the games where Chelsea know it's a banana skin. It's the only trophy they're probably going to win all season if they can win it. So make it difficult. And also, everyone's writing off Parky. Surely Parky's not going to beat Chelsea. Oh wait, he's already done that with Bradford at Stamford Bridge. So if anyone knows how to beat Chelsea, and that was Jose Mourinho's Chelsea.
Was that Mourinho's
Parky.
first ever home defeat in a cup match as Chelsea manager or something as well? There's some mad stat, wasn't there?
Yes, there is some mental stat. I remember that game so vividly, that John Stead up front and...
Yeah. Were they 2-0 down and they won 4-2 as a League Two
team? That was it. 2-0 down, they won 4-2. And that was, I would say, one of Parky's biggest achievements. I know he's gone on and won promotions, but I think the manner of that
what
win...
he did at Bradford, getting to the League Cup final as a League Two team, knocking out Chelsea at the Bridge 4-2, right up there with anything he's achieved at Wrexham, and it shows the longevity of him as a manager as well.
Right up there with any manager. You used to pick any manager, and in terms of what you had available, what you went on to achieve in that individual season, that can go toe to toe with anyone. So for all the kind of Parky dismissers, I mean, that is absolute folklore stuff. And look, Parky is a grounded manager. He's level-headed, but he knows that Chelsea team are mentally fragile. They are. And I know they're mentally fragile against Arsenal and Man United and Liverpool, and we're not then. I understand that. But under the lights of the racecourse, I'm not saying we'll do them, but I'm saying we've got a very good chance that we could.
I also think from Chelsea's perspective, there is not even a need to win. It's to win well and convincingly, something that they've kind of struggled to do at times anyway. And, there is just so much expectation on them. And like you said, certainly not a free hit, because these players, this manager, want to prove that they are Premier League level. And it's such an exciting opportunity to test yourself and see just how far you are away from the very top end of the Premier League right now. But these players will be dreaming of the chance to upset a few egos and to have another scalp on their list. But like I said, Nath, I just think it's one of those games where we're going to give it a real good go. I think by the end, tired legs and their bench might make the difference. We'll get onto predictions right at the end of this podcast, but I think we're going to be right in this tie. I certainly don't think we're going to get swept aside and it's going to be a bit of a non-event. Be very disappointed if it is, but that's kind of our motivation, isn't it, this weekend? It's that go into the game. Look, if you get a result, that's incredible. But just give a good account for yourself. That's all we want to see, And again, it comes down to that. I know as Wrexham fans, we're so spoiled on success, and we always have this belief and this confidence because we've seen it happen so many times that we know it can happen. We know Wrexham can beat Chelsea this weekend. Of course, we know it. I really believe we can. I just want to see us give a good account for ourselves. I want to leave that stadium saying, I'm really proud of that team. I remember in those National League days pre-takeover where we used to just chant, and I think it was maybe when we lost to Luton in the playoff semi-final, and we just stood up and chanted, we're proud of you, we're proud of you, we're proud of you, Wrexham. And that's what is fundamentally most important, is to go out there with the eyes of the world watching. There'll be so many people watching on Saturday night who don't usually watch Wrexham. And I don't want them to watch what they saw against Cardiff, what they saw against Swansea. I want them to see Nottingham Forest take two. I want to see Coventry, Sheffield United this season, Ipswich. I want to see one of those performances where, look, the result might not go our way, but we're going to give it our all. And that will be fine with me.
Rich, you know what did piss me off though, and I normally don't cuss or swear on this podcast normally, but why on earth, and I know people might come back, in fact, let me not caveat it, why on earth are Wrexham still selling memberships after the draw was made against Chelsea? That's outright. I had Chelsea fans messaging me saying, oh yeah, I've just bought a Wrexham membership to try and buy a ticket. And I don't know whether they got tickets in the home end or not. I do not know that, and I'm sure the club could easily look and go, this sort of West London address has managed to get 2 tickets in the tech end. That doesn't seem right. That there has to come a point where either we need transparency on the number of members that we have. I think that should be a given anyway. And 2, we have to get to a point where we cap membership. I think, I appreciate it's just a money revenue stream for these big games, and you're selling people on the potential to get tickets, but that's just wrong. That's just wrong, in my opinion. I thought that was fundamentally wrong.
Yeah, it's one of those where I fully agree with you. Look, putting it out there, cards on the table. I've got a season ticket. I'm not as affected by these ballots as a lot of people are, so I'm sitting on my high horse when I'm preaching down to the masses about this. There is no simple way or reasonable way to keep everyone happy with home tickets. For a match like the Chelsea game, you still wonder, is fastest finger first fairer than a ballot? I personally think a ballot's probably the fairest way if you're putting all those members in with an equal chance of getting tickets, rather than who's available at that time, who's got the best internet, who's got the best reactions, who's got a bit of luck on their side. A ballot is probably fairer, but again, the fact there's such a tight turnaround between the game means you probably can't do that and kind of do it effectively, have times for returns and stuff in that process. So I think time restraints, which still seems very just annoying. I know it won't all be down to the club why it took so long to get ticket information out there, but that probably restricted why. But as soon as the draw is made, anyone who's buying a membership after that should be ineligible to buy tickets for the tie, I think, because it is basically saying that anyone who's bought a ticket after that is only interested in going to the Chelsea game. And I know that for other massive games across Europe, I think our friend James Kelly said that, is it for Hibs versus Celtic, that they sort of put membership bans on for the 2 months in advance of that fixture. So if 2 months before that game, you're only buying a membership then for this one bespoke game, they say, well, you can buy the membership, but you can't buy tickets to any games for the next 2 months or so. It just has that cooling off period to make sure that those long-term fans are protected. I think, again, one of the overarching issues is this lack of a loyalty scheme, maybe. Again, I know some people say that's sort of safeguarding those who go to games all the time anyway, and it maybe gets them into an even more exclusive club further down the line. But I do feel that it could just be handled better. And I know people will be saying, well, you two are just whinging all the time. You find an excuse to have a go at the club. But I do just personally think that the ticketing aspect of Wrexham still needs a lot of work to be done with it.
100%. I would say lack of space, hugely oversubscribed and in demand, that is never going to come to a natural resolution. That there is a lot more people want to go than space available. Chelsea themselves asked for more tickets, couldn't get them because of limited space. So I fully get that. But could you, the club have all the data of who goes to what members go to which games. Could you not have filtered it that if you'd have gone to both of the first two rounds of the FA Cup, that you were one of the eligible members? And if you didn't go to both the Forest game and the Ipswich game, as in, I'm not including season ticket holders, I'm just saying members here, but as a member, if you hadn't gone to both those games, because quite a lot were done, and you still would have had too many members for the tickets that were available, basically, or if you've gone to one of those games, for example. But I just think the idea of a loyalty scheme, and I was chatting to somebody the other day, and they were mentioning that other clubs always moan about loyalty schemes, and it's kind of difficult. What if you get on now? But I firmly believe at any level, if you go to places like Portsmouth or Bristol City or Hull or wherever on these midweek games, and you go previously to where were some of the far-flung games in Grimsby or Exeter, or and I'm not saying this because I went to all these. I didn't go to some of these, so but I know there are people that go to every single away game, and yet they're scrambling to get a Chelsea ticket either in a ballot or on a resale site or whatever. It's not right. You should be rewarded for making these miles, these hundreds of mile journeys, and right now you're not, and I don't know why.
Again, it's a difficult one because I fully agree with that sentiment. But my two kind of devil's advocate points against that again would be, one, lots of people can't do midweek away games just because of their work and job. So should they, I'm not saying be punished, but then be out of the running for home tickets because they just feasibly can't get their childcare issues or whatever, or their job. And the other one I'd say is, if someone has won in the ballot to go to Ipswich and Forest, is it then unfair that they'd get priority for Chelsea? Because they've already had they've already almost had their luck because they've gone to 2 home games already. And then someone else who's not gone to either of those should maybe have the opportunity to go to Chelsea instead. It kind of works both ways. Do you see what I mean?
I don't know what the term for being devil's advocate to the devil's advocate is, but whatever that is, I would say on your first point, 100% people work and cannot go, and it's miles and miles away. You go into like Weymouth on a Tuesday night and you get back at 4 a.m. or something stupid, and you probably start work at 6 or 7. So I fully appreciate that. But also, would those people who can't go not feel like those that did, deserve to be rewarded for that? Some people are taking time off work. I appreciate it's not popular, and maybe when all the stands have been built out, it won't be an issue. We'll have spare seats, if anything. You look at Charlton; they weren't full. If you wanted to go to that Charlton game, you wanted a home ticket, you were going to get one. You were pretty much going to get one, even for Wrexham. So it's probably not going to be a super long-term issue. Maybe we've gone through the kind of the toughest period and we had to grit our teeth and get through it, clench our jaw a bit. But I do think the idea that a loyalty scheme, will upset people or isn't right is every club has a loyalty scheme for those that travel thousands of miles a season. That's normal. And we are bucking the trend by not having one. So I'm increasingly perplexed by the fact that those games don't seem to count to anything in terms of loyalty.
Well, Nath, while we were both at Charlton on Saturday, the women were in action as well against Cardiff, like we said. Really disappointing that the game was on Saturday, 3 p.m, but was not disappointed by the result whatsoever. Wrexham with a massive 3-1 win a week after the cup final victory as well. And Wrexham have also announced that you can buy a Wrexham AFC women home ticket package for the remaining home matches of the season. Wrexham will return to the Kairos on March the 29th when they face Cardiff City again. And the club have announced that there is a special rate for supporters to attend the final 3 women's home matches this campaign. They are at, the Kairos for the Cardiff game and also back at the Rock as well. And supporters can go to the club website. They can buy ticket bundle for the games against TNS, Swansea and Cardiff City. What an exciting few weeks it is for them. They've had the cup win. It feels like they finally almost shifted that momentum now, and they've really proven that there is this north-south battle back again in Wales. And what a season this could be. The women could get into those Champions League qualifiers as well. Rob Brown read away at, somewhere in Slovenia, Slovakia, somewhere like that. Who knows?
Well, look, I know the guys on the Eat More Chips podcast are great, and Racecourse Ramble, they do a lot of plugging the women's team, a lot more than we do, so we will hold our hands up there. But I was chatting to a friend of mine. She's a women's football writer for The Telegraph. She's also a Hull fan, Catherine. She's been on the podcast before. And we were just chatting about Wrexham and how no Welsh team has ever won a qualifier in the Champions League. And the idea that in her first season, Jenny Sugarman could win the trophy and then go on and win the league title and get Wrexham into Europe is, again, it would just be a phenomenal coaching job. Absolutely incredible with many players that are semi-pro, and you do just feel like the sky's the limit. I know Michael Williamson cares a great deal about the women's team. I know Rob, when he was watching the penalties and was getting very stressed, cares a great deal about the women's team. Same for Ryan. Like, it is so easy for that to become an afterthought because, the men's team gets so much attention and media coverage, but no, they're committed to the women's team, and I think it's going to be a great end to the season. And hopefully, if I'm not working, I will try and get to that game at the Racecourse against Cardiff because I'd love to see the two title challenges going at it again. And we've had Cardiff's number, which has not been something we've had for a while. But that is the ticket bundle. More details on the website. Without further ado, I'm going to get on to my chat with Kieran, another colleague, talking about Chelsea, their mentality, and is Alejandro Garnacho up for the fight at the Kairos? Here's what Kieran had to tell me. Okay, then Chelsea this weekend. So I thought I would get one of my colleagues who covers Chelsea, Kieran, who covers Chelsea day in, day out, gets to follow their nonsense while I focus on the guys up in Manchester. Kieran, Chelsea. Never a dull day at Chelsea, is it?
Yeah, I mean, there always seems to be something going on because at the minute I've been thinking as they head to Aston Villa tonight as we record this, that game kind of carries shades of Fulham last season. They had to go there and win, and that kind of kick-started a good run for them to get into the Champions League. But if they don't get in the Champions League, they'll only have themselves to blame, essentially, not least for all
From
the
a
red
Wrexham point of
cards.
view, we're looking at this going, the fixture list was Arsenal away, Aston Villa away tonight when we record this, Wrexham away, Paris Saint-Germain away. So, the trip to North Wales being obviously the toughest of those four games, obviously. The question is, mainly, is how seriously, how strong are Chelsea going to take the FA Cup?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would be surprised if it doesn't happen. I'd be surprised if Romeo Lavia doesn't start because he got his first minutes against Arsenal since November. I'd be surprised if he starts against Aston Villa tonight, but I think he will get more minutes, and he looked good against Arsenal. And I think the Wrexham game smacks as a natural opportunity for him to come in and get a start. But I mean, the thing with Chelsea is they've got such a big squad. If you speak to people around Chelsea, they'll say it's a very high quality squad, and everyone would be deserving of a first team place in certain Premier League clubs. But I mean, that's hard for a club to juggle. I mean, the Daily Mail just had an interview with Keenan Dewsbury Hall, who basically laid bare what it's like to be a fringe player. No matter how well I played in the Conference League on a Thursday, I never troubled the Saturday or Sunday lineup. But so I think they will do some juggling, but then people at Chelsea will say, well, the 11 that we put out at Wrexham, even if it was to include, say, Tosin Adarabioyo, who Chelsea fans aren't really in love with, even if it included him, people in Chelsea will say it'll be more than enough quality, or it should be more than enough quality to win.
Well, we saw obviously the Charlton game, Rosenior took care of that. The whole game, Chelsea have had those banana skins in pretty much every round, right? And have comfortably dispatched of both of those. there'll be people that maybe haven't watched or Wrexham and know all these Chelsea superstars. Yeah, I'm not expecting, say, Cole Palmer to be turning out, or maybe even a João Pedro. But are we going to see the likes of him maybe in this rotated 11, a Garnacho, a Delap, a Neto? Because obviously he picked up the red card against Arsenal. What kind of players are Wrexham going to be looking against, think?
Yeah, so I'd be surprised if Liam Delap doesn't start. I think he started against Hull in the last round. Esteval's back on the pitch doing running, so he's not ready for Aston Villa tonight. Maybe Wrexham would be too soon, especially for him to start. But I reckon we could expect Romeo Lavia. This is just my opinion. I haven't been told anything. Caicedo seems to start every single game, no matter what it is. So they might chuck him in there because he seems quite indestructible. I'm trying to Malagusto at right back, I reckon, over Reece James. You don't want to run the risk of Reece James picking up an issue. Maybe Fofana, maybe Mamadou Sarr, maybe Marc Cucurella is in contention to come back for this game. So we might see him start unless they think, well, we don't want to run the risk, so use Gerald Hator. And obviously, Neto's suspended for Aston Villa, so I presume Garnacho will start against Villa. So that kind of leaves us guessing whether Neto will start against Wrexham. But I could see that happening. I could see him being in there.
Yeah.
But the Wills, it's still big names compared to other teams that might put out a weakened side. There's still some big names in there.
We chat so much about like Phil Parkinson and what people think of him, and maybe they don't like him. Rosenior is a really interesting one because from the outside, as you and I both know, he gets sort of routinely mocked for maybe things he says or things he does. What's it been like covering him, and what have you made of him so far at Chelsea?
Yeah, a lot of people seem to be taking the mick out of him, and maybe I'm partially to blame because I write pieces about, I wrote that piece about how he once used Lego when he was manager of Hull, like a Lego building session, and that, and that grew arms and legs once it made its way onto social media. People were like, oh, he's done this in his first week at Chelsea. And it was like, well, I never said that. I said he did it previously. And it all adds to this. People are trying to create this LinkedIn Liam narrative. And, Rosenior himself tells us in press conferences, I don't care. I don't care what you write about me, what people say about me. I'm sure he does care to a degree, but I find it all a bit unfair, in my opinion. From my perspective, I've been to pretty much every press conference and every game that he's managed at Chelsea. I like him. He's been nothing but fair with me. He has his little quirks in his press conferences, certain buzzwords that he likes to say, and but every manager has that. And I think he's been quite fair with us. My job is easier if Chelsea do well. So I personally hope they do make it into the Champions League, and then hopefully all that noise around Rosenior being linked in Liam will die down a little. I hope so anyway.
Yeah,
I think that's fair to say, isn't it?
Yeah, I think if he gets, they're definitely the outsider now to get into the top five. Obviously, saw Liverpool lose dramatically to Wolves, which helps Chelsea. Wolves doing everybody a favour, Man United and Villa as well. It's a really tough ask against Paris Saint-Germain to win the Champions League. So I just can't help shaking this feeling that Wrexham will be loud. It'll be a tough place to go. It'll be very tight. It's not the glamorous setup they're going to get at the Parc des Princes or what they'll get at Villa Park or the Emirates. So, Chelsea's mentality is, our colleague Oliver Holt wrote about this entitlement, this arrogance, and I hope a little bit of that spills into the FA Cup. But I can't help but think that the FA Cup is such a good chance for Rosenior to win a trophy. Like, it is probably the best chance, right, of any. Probably not going to win the Champions League. So, what you've seen at Hull, take the Hull game, for example. Wrexham lost at Hull. We got beat at Hull, and we went to Charlton and had a bit of a smash and grab at the weekend. Chelsea dominated those games, or they blew those teams away. I mean, the FA Cup so far has been a bit of a home from home for them.
Yeah, because I mean, that's the thing. You know, there's been a lot of narrative over the last week about how Chelsea wants Rosenior to be their Arteta. You know, they want him there for years because they want stability, longevity, style. They want all that. But the difference is Arsenal have gone so long without a trophy. Chelsea don't want that. Doesn't fly at Chelsea. You know, they're the club that's won it all, as they love to sing. So he needs to keep progressing in the Premier League, but he needs to win trophies at the same time. You know, Chelsea aren't going to stand for someone going 3, 4, 5 years without a trophy. I think Rosenior gets that. I think he knows that he's at a club that demands success, both in the long term and the short term. I think he'll be taking Wrexham away seriously. I mean, I'm intrigued as to which of the owners will be rocking up. I mean, Bedard goes to pretty much every game. I remember seeing him at Lincoln away on like a Friday night or something like that. I was like, what are you doing here? But, you know, fair play to him. Todd Bowley hardly goes to any games, but obviously given the Hollywood links to this one and him, if he isn't too busy on the conference circuit giving speeches at these business summits, I wonder if he's going to rock up for this one. I mean, weirdly enough, my wife and my son are coming on an away day with me. They're going, and it's not to Paris. They've chose to come to Wrexham for the weekend. So, so we're staying over in a hotel on Saturday night, and my wife and son are coming with me. It's the first time they've come to a game and they've chose Wrexham for it.
They've chose well, mate. The thing with Wrexham is, you know, like Hull, it's a fairly big stadium, right? Like it's more a traditionally bigger stadium.
Yeah.
Charlton is a big stadium, as we found out at the weekend.
Yeah.
Wrexham, you mentioned Lincoln, you know, Sincilbank, great, but that's very compact. This is very compact. You know, like I say, if you spoke to certain people at the club, they'd say like the changing rooms are a bit like League Two, and the dugout's really close. And Rosenior will hear all the abuse that, and I'm sure he won't care. But it's one of them where we've seen it over the years, where if it gets rocking, the race goes. Undoubtedly, Chelsea should stroll over Wrexham, like they did Hull and like they did Charlton. You know, it's another one where it's not a lose-lose, because if Chelsea win, they win, but they're expected to dominate. And if Wrexham get going, and the pressure, you know, if they don't get a result against Villa tonight, and then it's PSG coming up, it's a massive week this in Chelsea's season. They didn't get the win at Arsenal. You were there for that.
Yeah.
It's Villa tonight. You'll be there for that. Every game becomes even bigger the longer they don't get these massive wins.
Yeah, and I mean, this is where the players themselves, I know everyone talks, you know, the youngest team in the Premier League. They are, but very experienced. I mean, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, Chelsea presented plaques to 5 of their players before a training session because they reached 100 Premier League appearances. You know, they're young, but they're experienced. They should, and now, you know, going to a compact place like Wrexham is where they really need to stand up, show. So I don't want to go full Troy Deeney, but show some cojones. And so Rosenior has been hinting at that in press conferences. He's been saying, look, every game I'm learning which of these guys I can actually count on. You know, you don't want to see a Garnacho. I'm sorry to pick on him, but you don't want to see him, if he starts against Wrexham, you don't want to see him going up and thinking, I'm above these. I don't need to give my all or whatever. I think Rosenior is trying to drill into these guys that, look, nothing's a gimme. You know, don't be the, what was it, £1 billion bottle jobs. Don't rock up with an air of arrogance. You have to work for the wins. You know, and I'm sure Wrexham will make them work for it. And if Chelsea aren't up for that, then I think it could see a good chance of a cup set, really.
Well, last question, and just from a journalism point of view, I feel like these are the type of games where you'll learn a lot about, you know, the mentality of the players that are on the periphery, right? Like Rosenior came out this week post Arsenal and said, "I will drop you if you're not in it. Basically, if you're not up for it." So you're going to Wrexham, as you said.
Yeah.
Wife and son are going as well. you must be intrigued from that point of view. Narrative-wise, there's so much to go at in the FA Cup, and not least with the Hollywood connection as well.
Yeah, because I've been thinking what preview I should write for it, and I mean the Hollywood angle does. I mean, I'm a little bitter because I'm actually a Hartlepool fan, and there's that story of how Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney wanted to buy Hartlepool because the idea, from what I heard, was to call the documentary "Dead Pools," and, as they resurrect pools to life. So I'm not bitter, really happy for you.
I didn't want to bring it. I didn't want to bring it up.
But there's that narrative. I mean, from a Chelsea point of view as well, it is the red cards is a big thing for us at the moment. The fact they've had 9 all season, 10 if you include Maresca, and they've all been to different players. And I've been updating my red card 11 every time they get a new red card because it's just sort of ludicrous. But I quite like that. Maresca used to claim they didn't have a disciplinary problem, but there's none of that from Rosenior. He's kind of owning it, and like you say, he's saying if you don't toe the line, you're going to get dropped. So that is another interesting angle, which I'm going to be keeping an eye on, sort of starting lineups at Villa, at Wrexham, to see who he's hinting at, who isn't doing as he says. But I feel like it is a big game for Chelsea. It's not just Chelsea rocking up and thinking, yeah, we're world champions. Look here on what it says on our chest. I think they need to go and win and push for a trophy, because even though they won the Club World Cup in the Conference League last season, there's always that unrest among the fan base. So they can't really afford to start, giving more reasons for the supporters to rain abuse down on them even more. So it's a big game for Chelsea as well as it is for Wrexham.
I was going to say lose, and it will be immortalised on Disney Plus for years to come, which Todd Bowley would absolutely hate. Anyway, we'll see, mate. Enjoy Wrexham. I hope your family enjoy it as well. And I don't know, let's hope for a humdinger of a game. So, Rich, there you go. Is Chelsea going to get a red card? Are Chelsea going to get a red card? I remember Daniel Jefferson getting one for Sheffield United that turned that game on its head. It's just going to be great, isn't it? I can't imagine what the tech end and what PG7 and co are going to be shouting at Alejandro Garnacho. But I'm very much looking forward to it. And I'm also interested to see how many sort of stars and execs show up, because it's not the biggest director's box in the world and not the biggest aviation gin suite or Betty Buzz suite, whatever it is now. So we shall see how big a Hollywood turnout we get. Is Todd Bowley going to show up?
Who knows? I mean, Michael Caine's a Chelsea fan, isn't he? See if he's there. We're only meant to blow their bloody FA Cup chances off. Anyway, team news for the weekend as well, Nath. Parky said, still 10 more days that Matty James is going to be wearing his boot. Kakache making progress, but won't be back. Sheaf obviously not expected back. Still maybe a playoff campaign if there is one, but not expected to play again in the league this season. So, you could potentially have Matty James back for Easter, or, I don't want to, there's an elephant in the room here. I don't want to jinx it too much, but if Wrexham were to beat Chelsea, the FA Cup quarterfinals are Easter weekends. That would mean West Brom on the Friday and Southampton on the Monday would both get postponed into midweek matches. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. But
Rich, it was in our WhatsApp group, or we were chatting to another Wrexham fan, where the debate was, we obviously want to beat Chelsea. I would give a lot to beat Chelsea, not donating any limbs, but I would love to beat Chelsea. The question is that more damaging to the promotion bid than just playing well and going out? And if those Easter games move and Wrexham have a fixture pile up and Southampton are nipping at the heels and the playoffs are in the balance, I just can't think like that. My brain will not be wired to think like Wrexham are better off losing. But do you see, again, the devil's advocate that people are throwing out, that maybe it's better to have a good day out and then, or can we not think like that? I can't think like that.
Ask me on Sunday. If we win, then I'll be saying it's a great problem to have. If we lose, I'll be saying that's exactly what I wanted. I'm going to twist this whichever way suits Wrexham. So, like I said, just put it there again, plain English. If Wrexham lose this weekend, which, we probably are expected to, it's West Brom away on Good Friday, Southampton at home on Easter Monday. They are, that's how the Easter calendar typically works in sort of the English pyramid. Of course, next year it'll be all change because the international breaks during then, so you don't have it for the Championship and Premier League. But if Wrexham were to beat Chelsea, then our FA Cup quarter-final would be that weekend instead. So West Brom away and Southampton at home would have to be Tuesday or Wednesday night matches squeezed in somewhere else in the schedule and the calendar before the end of the campaign, which, like you said, Nath, there isn't maybe an impossibility that your final 3 games of the season would then be, Cov, Southampton and Middlesbrough. That wouldn't be an impossibility. So, yeah, there's a way to twist it. But I think Wrexham beating Chelsea can't be seen as a bad thing whatsoever. And we'll find out this weekend what that means. It's also a big weekend in the Championship as well. On Tuesday night, there was one match. Ipswich Town defeated Hull City. Hull back in action again this weekend when they take on Millwall. So, like we keep on saying, lots of the teams around us are playing each other. So, there are going to be drop points. There's going to be opportunities. As the Championship table stands at the moment, Coventry top 71 points. They have a 5-point lead over Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough have a 3-point lead over Ipswich, though Ipswich have a game in hand against Portsmouth still to play. Millwall 4th on 62 points, Hull 5th on 60 points, Wrexham 6th on 57 points, Southampton 53 and Derby 51. That's how it stands at this moment in time. So, yeah, Wrexham 3 points behind Hull, 4 points ahead of Southampton, have to play both of those teams at home in the coming weeks as well. Like I said, Hull City next Tuesday night. We'll be back over the weekend for a bumper podcast looking ahead to that one as well. How are you feeling, Nath?
Well, it's my birthday weekend. I'm going to worry about the Championship. I am going away basically straight after the game, so we will record, I'm sure, after the game, and then I will be on a plane over to Spain, hopefully celebrating and not drowning my sorrows over there. I feel like you don't get owed anything for your birthday, but it would be nice. Be a nice gift if Chelsea were to roll over and lose. And I also think it would be very Chelsea to lose to Wrexham and then beat Paris Saint-Germain in Paris. So that there are stranger things that have happened. I just want to know, Rich, lastly, because I think Wrexham will narrowly lose in extra time. I think they will get all the way to extra time. My question was going to be, who do you start at number 10? Do you go with Windass? Do you go with Broadhead? Do you go with Rathbone? Do you go with... Oh, it's not going to be Keeler Dunn. So who do you think it's going to be?
Yeah, it's a tough question. I personally, let's go for the full team. Okonkwo in goal. Back three of Max, Hyam and Doyle. Wing backs, you've got Kabori, you've got to have there. You've got to have Thomas in there. Midfield, Dobson and O'Brien.
Yeah, it's got to be. It's just whether you go. It's whether you go with Vyner for just like a proper, more defensive setup and just go for it.
I think it's one of those games where Dobbo will absolutely relish it, and it'll be him at his best. We've got to get O'Brien playing in quite a restricted, limited role. You almost don't want him to be doing what he's best at. You just want him to be that metronome, do the steady stuff, real simple passes. Don't actually run too much. Just sit there. I know it might be hard for you to do because we signed to do something very different.
I half wonder whether he'll be, sounds mad sometimes, but you might get what I mean, where he'll play better against better players. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he might raise his, because he's been in the Premier League, right? So he might raise his level just around better players. I don't know if that makes sense, but
that's what we saw in our cup runs in non-league. When we played against Sheffield United, when we played against Coventry, Elliot Lee just shone because he was so used to playing against a better caliber of player and the game suited him a lot more. He had more time on the ball. He wasn't being harassed as much. He wasn't being given these elbows off the ball like he was getting in non-league. So he was excellent. So I'm going Dobson, O'Brien. My number 10s, the number 10s depend on the number 9, don't they? And it's whether you go for what we did against Forest and start Sam Smith, or you go for Kiefer Moore and let him batter them down. I'm
going for Kiefer Moore, the battering ram, if it was me.
Yeah. So you then going for Windass because we always say they work as a partnership. And I personally, I'm not sure how this even really works with Kiefer, but I'd probably go Rathbone and Windass and Broadhead.
Oh, so you're not playing Windass?
I wasn't going to. I was thinking, I think I'd rather have Broadhead again because you talk about players playing up to the level. I think Broadhead plays better in the bigger games, really, in the second half of the season.
I would go Windass, and I would go Rathbone. I would go because, like I say, I've said it previously. I think Rathbone can tuck in and give you an extra body. He's busy, and I think Kiefer's best partnership with anybody on the pitch is with Windass. So I'm playing the percentages in terms of how we can set up, who links really well together. Just play the fine margins and hope one of their guys gets sent off, and we're here celebrating, and I'm getting on the plane very happy.
Yeah. So yeah, predictions. You're going for a narrow-spirited defeat.
2-1, I think, in extra time. Yeah, I think.
I just want us to have that moment. Do you know what I mean? I want us to have that goal at the tech end. I want to have those limbs. I want to be flicking the V's at the away end. I want that belief. I want that optimism. I've got the feeling that the game's going to hinge on a controversial refereeing decision. I know Peter Banks is the referee. He's not
VAR.
the most popular figure.
VAR as well. VAR. We haven't had that before.
Here's
VAR.
My prediction is we lose. We score a goal that's disallowed for handball, and get a glimpse of the Premier League
score,
that we don't want.
Big Dom Hyam, bang.
I think Kiefer scored and it gets disallowed because he's alleged to be jumping over Tosin Adarabioyo or something. Honestly, like I say, enjoy the journey. Part of me, because we watch so much Premier League football, part of me does not want to get there because I despise VAR so much and it kills it. And this weekend, I'm hoping it's not the story, but I don't know.
Could you imagine, Rich, very quickly, could you imagine the alternative where Sam Smith's running through on goal, he's been pulled down, and it kind of looks a bit theatrical. In the 91st minute, it's 0-0, and you just hear the referee puts his finger to his ear, runs over to the little pitchside monitor, penalty. Unbelievable. As everyone waits with bated breath, Rosenior and everyone's crowding around the referee, Pedro Neto, and everyone's crying. Penalty. Big Josh Windass steps up, scores, doesn't celebrate. We're all going nuts. And that is all he and she wrote. So who knows? That's what I want to imagine and dream and manifest.
Whatever happens, we're going to have a great weekend. Enjoy it. This is the best time to ever be a Wrexham fan. We are going to have our best ever season, probably with the men's first team, the women's first team. We're in the FA Cup 5th round. We're dreaming of the quarters. We're dreaming of Wembley. We're dreaming of winning it all. Wrexham are inevitable. Whatever happens this weekend, we are not going anywhere. Stick with us for the rest of the season. Stick with us for life. Wrexham Football Club, what a gift it has been. Thank you very much for joining us, wherever you are in the world. Remember, comment down below. Who's been your player of the season so far? What's the team you want to see this weekend? Can Wrexham actually beat Chelsea? Of course we can. Thank you very much to Red 10 People Development for your continued support of the podcast, and to Wrexham-based band Hypnotic for the music, the stings that we hear in the show. Take care, and we'll see you again next time.
The Wrexham AFC podcast with Nathan Salt and Rich Faye.